All right, welcome everyone to the Policy Committee of the Dearborn Board of Education. Today is June 11th, 2020. And we have a few items on the agenda to discuss today. And
we need to call a roll call for the board members who are present.
Yep, I was about to do that. So a roll call, Trustee Moses is here, Trustee Peskov.
Here. Trustee
Mead.
Yes.
Okay, all present. First thing on the agenda item is 2020 graduates without the state assessment. Dr. Maliko, who would like to take that away?
So I'll make a couple comments and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Peterson, who's here for that specific purpose. And Ms. Ali Baz is going to guide the agenda under your direction, Chair Moses, after that. So basically with the governor's order, there was basically the requirements for certain assessments that are in policy. So the governor's order supersedes things. And so I brought Shannon here just as an informational piece, but it really kind of comes down to our guidelines, not necessarily any policy change. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Peterson, our Executive Director.
Hi, everybody. So we have an administrative guideline that says our senior, in order to graduate from Dearborn schools, they have to take the state assessment, the Michigan, the MME, the Michigan Merit Exam, which is now the SAT, and the MSTEP. Obviously, our students did not take it this year, and they typically take it in junior year, but sometimes we have students who are behind credits, so they're reclassified after their junior year. So they kind of miss the window for the 11th grade test. And that's the issue that we have is we had some students who missed that window and were unable to take it this year because of the shutdown. So we're just asking that they still be allowed to graduate without that test.
And if I can call, the governor's order did say that all those assessments were waived for this year. So it really is aligned with what happened in the crisis.
Well, the board has
I think, no, it's more informational because it's a guideline. It really, it's more of, we wanted to just bring it to the policy committee. Sometimes we do that just to make sure that, the board is aware. But really we have to follow it because it is the law under the governor's order. But in the spirit of transparency, sometimes we'll bring a guideline to you just to look at. And if you have any comments, that's, that would be fine. But I think it's just important that people are aware we have this guideline, but we can't follow it this year because of the COVID situation and the governor's order.
And the number of students who were not able to take the exam were around 200 students?
I'll let Ms. Peterson answer that.
I included that in board briefs.
I have the link. Hang on one second.
193.
Thank you.
Okay.
100.
But yeah, between the three schools.
I have one quick question, Shannon.
Go ahead, Trustee Peskov.
I'm assuming that the SAT test that they're given in the 11th grade, they don't pay for, as in, I'm going way back to the olden days of having to pay for the test for college entrance exam.
Correct. Michigan pays for it now.
Michigan pays for it now. Are we under any obligation of any kind? Because these students now, in order to enter college, I'm going to have to assume may have to absorb the cost of an entrance exam in the future to apply. I know that I think they waived it at the entrance level for the colleges too. I'm not sure. As I recall.
Correct.
Here.
Most colleges waived it.
So the whole thing is just kind of a wash, and we're not going to be held to any kind of future obligation with these students down the road or anything, correct?
Not that I anticipate.
Okay. And they would have all graduated except for, I'm assuming they all qualified grade-wise and everything else. They've all caught up. Except for the
correct. We audit the transcripts separately, but they have to have both.
Okay. Right. I know. Okay. That's all my questions.
Okay. So Dr. Maliko, is the board going to vote on this kind of resolution or?
No, there's no, since it's a guideline, it's just more informational. If there's any questions or concerns, just to be out there in the public, but you don't really need to make any, there's no necessary action because it's an administrative guideline. Administration would just have the discretion to just waive it given the governor's order.
And what we really
if it was a
go down
policy, then we would have
when we graduate them. That's okay, Glenn.
Yeah.
I just want the time that we're really approving all of this of any kind is when we actually sign off on their graduation.
So we just felt like, I mean, we just felt the way we operate is always transparency. We have great communication with the board and the public that technically we didn't have to bring this guideline to this committee, but this is the appropriate committee in the spirit of how we always operate. So, that's so that everyone's aware of this situation. So.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
I would say too, Trustee Mosip, if you would just report out on it at the next meeting, that would be great too, because then again, it's even more transparent during the committee reports. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. Okay, if there are no more discussions to this item, we can move on to the second item, which are sample resolutions from Neola about giving the superintendent the permit to suspend policy during situations like COVID-19. So who's, are you bringing that up, Dr. Maleko?
Sure, I can speak to it, and then I'll go ahead, Mason. Why don't you talk about it?
Okay. So these are just samples of resolutions because the governor's orders addressed that these resolutions are in line with the executive orders ordered by the governor. And one of the samples that we shared is more generic, and the other one is more specific to what the governor said regarding the superintendent's right to suspend policy through COVID-19. This is not a policy, so again, there would be more of the board choosing to move forward with one of the resolutions and then making that decision as far as if they David, that the resolution just makes it more formal, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right on, Mason. It just
so it's
makes
for
it
this
more
time
formal.
period. Yeah,
That's
for this time period, then it's not a policy that would be published forever with our policies, as it's only applicable to this time period.
And it would just go ahead.
Well, the dates are already that are on here. I mean, we're closing in on where this is going to be moot anyhow because the executive order is going to expire.
Expired.
Yeah. So,
yeah, well,
what are we exactly considering then? Making a more open-ended date if she were to bring back another executive order, were this to re-emerge as a emergency again, or is this because we're kind of behind the 8 ball now, timing wise, with this? I'm not sure that this resolution does anything at this point.
So I guess the way we were thinking of it is you could approach it 2 ways. Is one, just an FYI, it's for our information, for your information, and then God willing, we don't have a reoccurrence. And we have a wonderful school year next year without having any of these issues would be wonderful. But in case that we thought it was important to bring it to your attention as it was part of the governor's order, but there's not really anything that you have to act on at this time unless if you choose to.
Okay.
So we just try to keep you as informed as possible. So if ever it was needed, you would have the background information to make a educated decision.
We could pull it out of the bag, redate it, and have it ready to go.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, this provides us with a framework.
Because I was on one of the webinars with the attorney groups through our MAS.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Okay. Oh, sorry, it was David. So anyway, it was just because of the situation that we would have, this could protect us in a case of, so for example, the governor's order protects us with a lot of the waivers of state requirements and other things, but it doesn't necessarily address all of our policies. And in emergency situations, there could be some policies that not the bylaws, but the policies pertaining to students and other things that we may not be able to adhere to because of the crisis. So it was just something for the board to be aware. It's almost like the governor giving an order. If we ever came to that point in an emergency, the superintendent could, you could give the authority to temporarily suspend so that someone couldn't go to a policy. For example, if there was a policy, I'll just use on bullying, and we say that we have to have care to the core in the schools or something every year, but then we're not in the schools. Well, we didn't follow the policy. So that's just one example, but there could be other things that are required that, it may come down to the situation. If we don't have all schools, we can't comply with those policies. So I agree with what Mason and David had said. Is it's nothing that I think that is urgent, but it is something to be aware of. So it gives the board an option in case of a crisis to make sure that we're following our policy, and our guidelines, which is, we try to do our best to do that. And that's why we brought the other guidelines. So it was recommended through an attorney group. And then I think because it came through Neola, I had mentioned to David, we should at least bring it before the policy committee so there's awareness among the board.
So, David, did we not already have a policy kind of along this line of granting some kind of, I can't remember whether we did or maybe we didn't.
Yeah, I don't recall anything specific along those lines. I think this is pretty unique situation.
Specific, yeah.
Yeah.
But under an emergency of any kind, I mean, were it to be war or, some other kind of extraordinary circumstance, maybe we would want to consider down the road having some kind of, rather than having to do this by resolution specific, that something that we could pull out for these unique circumstances that would go for any kind of a state emergency or a national emergency. I don't know how. Does it always have to be specific to a particular order, or could we make it a more generic one? I'm just saying, thinking down the road, maybe we might be able to consider. Maybe not. Maybe that would be too easily. But it's just like the governor already has this power in the Constitution to under an emergency, and it doesn't specify which emergency, that she can have these added executive powers. Maybe we want to consider that for the superintendents. I don't know. It's just something to talk about, I guess. So this is nothing we're going to be acting on either.
No, it's not necessary that you do so.
All right.
But I just say along the lines of what you're thinking, Trustee Petlichkoff, is if you get into a situation, and you could have checks and balances with how you write it out too. So it's not like this indefinite. It's more of in an emergency, whenever something happens and maybe the board can't come together for whatever reason.
That's what I'm thinking.
So then the superintendent can just declare, and it allows us maybe to do that to the next board meeting or something when the board addresses it, something like that. So then we're in compliance with our policies. And
that's what I was kind of thinking along those lines as a stopgap.
Yeah. So it's something we could probably look at too with our attorney groups and come back, and we just wanted to see if there was interest in it, I think.
Well, if myself personally, after reading the two, I would give you the one that's more generic. It doesn't include things like you could sign a contract for anything and everything.
Okay.
Not that I don't trust you, but I like the one that gave you less.
That's the more responsible approach. So the next item on the agenda is really just that I didn't want you to think that we forgot about the online policy that we discussed at our last meeting. And we had discussed coming up with a policy. I did make contact with someone from Neola, and I don't have the draft yet of that policy, but my plan is to get that draft to you prior to our next board policy committee meeting. But I included it on the agenda because I wanted to just bring it back, keep it in the forefront, because it's what we discussed last time that we were together. And then the last bullet point on the agenda is just, again, to let you know this is what was discussed. This was the discussion item at the June 9th board meeting, and it was going to be voted on the June 22nd meeting. Last meeting, John Leacher, the administrator for health, safety, and security for the district, had recommended some language changes to reflect current practices, and they made some updates. David touched on it on Monday's board meeting, just very briefly as a discussion item. And so that those links are on here, but that is what will be voted on at the next board meeting.
And you'll be sure that those will be sent along to the board prior to the meeting with enough time for them to review the changes, either with the red line out, same as what we see.
Yeah, I typically don't share the board agenda with the entire board. However, I can do so. I can put that in my board briefs this evening, actually.
Just the policies that they'll be voting on.
Policies, yeah. So
sure. Yeah, I could do so. I just submitted board briefs for this week. I'll include it in there.
Yeah, that's wherever, so that they can see what the change will actually be that they're voting on. Nobody wants to vote on something they don't know what they're voting on.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll do. So we don't have any other agenda items on the agenda. If there's any policies that you would like us to research or look into updating, please let us know. Trustee Mosip, did you have any policies that you came across since we've met last?
I do not. However, we want to still review any outdated policies that you would think that need to be reviewed. Mm-hmm. I think we did a great job for the security ones, many of them bringing them up to date. And I do not have any, as far as policy. Now, we want to get into the board bylaws, but we want to see if we can meet in person next meeting. So to discuss this further. So I wanted to get everybody's feeling as well. And I think I'll take this offline to see how we can have our next meeting in person. I know City Council already started meeting in person.
I went to a study session just this week, and they were all in person, so they are doing it.
Yeah. So to discuss those bylaws, which I think are important, it would be good to have them in person as well. So I would recommend if my two colleagues and all of you are comfortable having the next policy meeting in person, as we, I think, talked about it last board meeting, that we want to have the board meeting in person. Is that correct, Dr. Malipo? Or we're still not there yet?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to have the next board meeting will be in person, but there's an online option. And this is
for
our attorney recommendation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for the public, because we're going to have to limit with the rules, we have to limit the number that can come into the board room with social distancing. We've cleared it through our legal counsel. So we have clear direction on that, but we will be live, and we'll have a virtual option for the public. But the reality is that we always have a virtual option for the public because we broadcast it live on the cable and YouTube. The only difference is that we'll continue to allow the public comment, both in person or via the Google form for those. And the reason is because we'll get to the point. I'm not saying we're going to have a big crowd or anything like that, but just in case, we have to limit the number to the room, so we don't want to limit their public comment. So that would happen at the next meeting. So if we wanted, and because we have 2 in June, that is actually less than 2 weeks away. The next official board meeting after that, and we did it for a reason, is the end of July. I believe it's around the 20th of July. And the reason we do that is because we separate them for the month of July because of staffing and other things that we need to handle. So, I mean, I don't know how soon you want to have it together, but
I think having the policy meeting right before the July one would be fine.
Okay.
If nothing urgent comes up before then. Go back to our normal routine.
Okay. So you like it maybe at 6 o'clock before that's
my preference.
So depending on the chair and the trustee.
Dr. Mead, what are your?
Well, I think the next P12 is the 20th, right? And that's a
22nd.
Monday. That's a Monday. So what were you thinking?
I was thinking July, the July meeting.
Before the July 20th meeting.
No,
Okay.
not the July, the whatever, yeah, is that July 20th?
Yeah.
Is that,
Yeah.
So on July 20th.
Or the meeting chairs, and that's. what
Oh,
we
I
do
know that.
consider.
I'm just putting that out there. So I don't have to sit there with a mask on my face for 3 hours.
Well, that is the, the regulation too. I mean, unless something changes, that we will be wearing a mask. Now, our attorney did say you can pull it to the side when you speak, but then you got to put it back on.
Well, maybe we'll have a short meeting. A lot of us won't be talking.
All right,
Kind
sounds
of like
good.
a puzzle.
I do not see any comments, public comments for the policy committee. So I don't. Does anybody else have anything else to add or for future agenda items?
Not at the moment that I can think of.
Anything from the administration?
I just wanted to say that for the bylaws, I won't be including those until the committee has more discussion, and then I'll include them in board briefs for the entire board to review.
But Mason, will you be sure and bring to the table, because this is part of my problem, is my memory of the things we've already previously discussed. I don't know who took notes.
I have the notes. Yeah.
Notes, so that we can go over all of that again to refresh memories on some of these topics of what needs to be, what has been discussed, and what were some of the things that we were looking at. So
Absolutely.
that
I have
it in front of us. Yeah. Okay, good.
I don't remember well either.
I don't. Well, it's been so many, my God, it's been since February, I think, that we had the last in-person policy meeting. So it's kind of hard to keep everything organized when it comes to that. So I want to make sure. I don't want to say anything that, it wasn't accurate. Yeah. So that's always my concern when you do it this way. And quite frankly, at the study session for city council, they were having similar conversations that their virtual meetings haven't been seamless either. So it's tough to do meetings this way and make sure that you're as productive as you would like to be. So
absolutely. No problem.
Okay. One other thing. Oh yeah, can I just, for Mason, on the online policy, I just want to make sure we've captured everything. For whatever is done, that we decided that we wanted to just have one whole separate policy for that one. Is it going to then include all of the potential variables, the bullying, the online learning rooms, the whatever, all those different moving parts to a virtual education that may exist come fall?
So I imagine that it will reference all the other policies that address harassment and bullying, and then it will also reference the online component of the student code of conduct.
Right.
Which is being developed now. So hopefully the online component of the student code of conduct will include in depth everything that we described. Right. So it'll reference that document.
Okay. All right. That's fine. I just want to make sure that because there's so many different parts that have to be considered if we do one policy to cover the online environment.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Maleko?
Just one logistical thing for next meeting too. So I'm setting it right now in the calendar to all of you, 5:30 to 6:30, which I think is a good idea, because if the board meeting is 7, given the social distance in that, we'll likely have to either use the board. I mean, we'll probably have to use the board room because we have to social distance in the committee. So that would give us some time for so it's not a direct overlap. Or we could use maybe room 13 with a lot more space, but I'll have to work that out with David to see what we could, handle. So that's just a logistical thing just to keep in mind. So I think that 5:30 time, Dr. Amin, is perfect, because then it'll be, if we say 5:30 to 6:30, then that gives us a little bit of time in between to deal with some of these logistical challenges that we have in this new, social distance situation. So appreciate that.
Absolutely. Okay, sounds great. Thank you, everybody, for coming on today. And if there's nothing else, we can adjourn this meeting.
Have a good
Goodbye,
night.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Okay.